All right,
Still early.
welcome to the September meeting of the Sustainability Advisory Commission for Urbana. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Will staff please call the roll?
Stacy Goss,
Here, thank you.
Dustin Allred,
Here.
Tomas Delgado,
Here.
Megan McGinty, Andrew Stuff,
Here.
Morgan White here, Tess Wilde Dean, Scott Tess,
Here.
Maddie Garbaz here. Good.
All right, thank you. We have a quorum this evening. Part of your packets this past week should have included the minutes from our last meeting back in August. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
A motion to approve?
Thank you.
I second.
Great, thank you. Are there any changes or additions to those minutes that need to be made? Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes from October, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. All right. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda this evening that anyone would like to make? Okay, then we will just use the agenda as printed. There are no guests here this evening for public input, so I will move on to presentations. Scott, will you please provide the staff report?
Sure.
Thank you.
We are entering our last month to sign contracts for Solar Urbana Champaign. We're all done with solar power hours, so we're just wrapping up site assessments proposals and acceptance of proposals. We're at, the packet says 128 kilowatts, it's 134 I think as of today. So continuing to increase our total number. I expect that to continue to rise. We have, I think it was 700 kilowatts of proposals that are out. All that is not going to convert, but it does show you that there's a lot of folks interested enough to go to a solar power hour and get a proposal. And they may end up getting a solar array in some future year, so that's all good stuff. We have a nice announcement. The landfill solar development received an incentive from the state/utility company program from the Solar for All sub-program. So that means we're going to be able to move forward with a low-income community solar project at the city's closed landfill. So this will be a 2 megawatt project. We have room for about 6 megawatts, so there's still more possible solar programming in the future. So our selected installer, SunPower, is moving forward with all of the documentation and so forth that the state program needs to proceed. And I don't have a timeline on this yet because we applied for, some other incentives earlier on and we weren't selected. So, I don't know when we're going to start, but I'm guessing it's going to be quite a few months before we're able to move forward on construction, and probably don't need to do a lot of marketing until we get closer to having a solar offering that people can sign up for. So all that to say, it's a great announcement, and we'll be working on it behind the scenes for some number of months.
Just the very basic conceptual marketing. People who want to, tell me if this is correct, people who are interested in buying solar energy will be able to, once this is up and running and available, buy it through or from the site on the landfill.
Yes, if they're income qualified.
Okay. So it's the
And this-
low income, or
Yeah.
it's the program is for low income.
Correct. There are market rate community solar projects as well in the state. I suspect that all of them are going to end up on a web-based marketplace that the state is setting up called solarinthecommunity.com. And that's going to be kind of a clearinghouse for all these, is what it appears to be the ambition. But yes, we will have a low-income solar subscription, solar electric subscription similar to other community solar projects.
Okay.
Who's going to do the main recruiting for that from the community? Do we have a third-party vendor or partner that's going to
SunPower.
work on that?
So SunPower is primarily responsible. They may subcontract to some vendor. They may, I mean, I'm sure we will partner with community organizations to share
Okay.
information about this.
Okay.
Whether they do the marketing directly, in-house, or whether they hire a subcontractor remains to be seen.
Okay.
Thanks.
Moving on, the Landscape Recycling Center fiber optic internet project I mentioned last month received one bid, and it was more expensive than the amount budgeted for installing fiber. So we're going to be talking to the vendor that bid, as well as others, about what kind of expectations we should have about getting internet at that facility, and we're also going to look at some other options and see if there is a way, with fiber or some other connectivity to get internet to the Landscape Recycling Center ticket booth, because that opens up more options for them.
Could the city do it themselves? Install the fiber?
I don't think we have the equipment.
Okay.
I mean, we could potentially rent a piece of equipment, but I'm not sure that we can do it cheaper than a vendor. So possibly, something in the wording of our procurement documents cause the price to be higher. So those sort of things we're going to have to investigate.
The other thing is, it's not very common for the city to ask for fiber optics, right?
We don't do a lot of that.
So
no.
so that those vendors may not be on your standard distribution list. So
No.
if it were to go back
but-
out, would it help for someone who might know some fiber optic people to like?
Well, we
thinking
post
about you.
we post in the newspaper per law, and we post on our website, and there are third-party websites that basically search the whole internet for keywords of bid announcements, collect them, and then share them on their website or with their members. And we did get a lot of those asking for the bid documents. And we also asked around and collected contact information for fiber installers and board companies, and directly emailed them as well.
Okay.
So
So
we
it
had,
wasn't that.
yeah. So we just need to investigate it more and go back to the drawing board.
It's sort of I wanted to say, like, it's sort of interesting to me that the space at the Landscape Recycling Center might or could be considered like an area that might be like a last mile kind of area for internet service providing.
We
And I'm
have,
curious about, have you talked to like cable companies about that? And I realize that that's not the super fast internet that, we all have access to by fiber, but is there any, are there any alternatives like through cable companies or?
we have fiber at the Arbor Shop already.
Okay.
So this project would just connect Arbor Shop to that ticket booth.
How far away is that?
Half mile maybe.
Okay.
And there's probably cable, at least at the corner, near the Arbor Shop too,
Mhm.
telephone and so forth. So what we're really doing is connecting the ticket booth to the Arbor Shop.
Okay.
And so maybe fiber is not the way to go. There may be a different technology. We're going
You're gonna
to
think.
explore that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
This, I say here that the Arbor Division has purchased a compost spreader with partial grant funding. We're about to purchase a compost spreader with partial grant funding from the Lumpkin Family Foundation. This is part of our Midwest Grows Green commitment. That's the natural lawn care program that we do some public education around in the fall. And we do that with the Urbana Park District. So we have dedicated the south lawn at the city building, this property, to natural lawn care, no synthetic chemicals. And the three practices to replace synthetic chemicals are mowing high, fertilizing with organic compost, top dressing, and core aerating. So we're doing those practices, but we'll be much facilitated by having a compost spreader when you're talking about spreading compost on a turf lawn, rather than just putting it in your flower beds. So we were able to get $2,500 towards that purchase, and we're working on finalizing that now. And then the Park District's also going to borrow that piece of equipment and top dress a baseball field and see how that goes, and see if they can maintain the tough turf that you need to have on a baseball field with Landscape Recycling Center compost. So we get a lot of benefits out of that. It's less chemical load in our urban environment, and we also sell more Landscape Recycling Center product if we can convert some folks from chemicals to compost fertilizer.
How is that powered?
I'm
Compost
guessing it's
spreader.
gas,
Okay.
because it is powered. It's a self-propelled piece of equipment that we're looking at. So staff, some additional public engagement. Staff spoke at a panel at the Center for Urban Resilience and Environmental Sustainability workshop. This is kind of a developmental workshop for the center. It's brand new, and they were working on bringing together a lot of partners throughout the University of Illinois system, as well as the communities it serves, to identify the preeminent sustainability challenges that the center will address in the future. U-Cycle was at the Sweet Corn Festival again this year. You may have seen them. We had a different approach with collecting and composting corn cobs from the Sweet Corn Festival this year. We narrowed the scope and volume of what we're going to collect so that we could keep an eye on it and keep custody of those containers throughout the event, so that they don't get contaminated with garbage, which they typically do. And so we were able to take about a pickup truck load of corn cobs to the Landscape Recycling Center and get tipped. And so they are undercover now and composting away. In a few months, we'll probably check on it, and they'll just all be soil. So that was nice.
Cool.
And we're also doing some advertising, as we usually do, for move-in in the campus area. We have a lot of new residents that come in, and so we constantly have to do U-Cycle education. And our next Sustainability Advisory Commission meeting would be October 1st at 7 p.m. downstairs.
I would just add that I was one of the volunteers at the U-Cycle tent, and had a lot of fun. I volunteered for a couple of hours, and there was a cute little game that I got to play with community members and kids, and it was very, very simple. There were like 4 recycling cans, small ones, lined up like in a row, and a little empty plastic bottle, and it was just kind of, hey, you can toss a plastic bottle in the cute little recycling can and win a sticker or a lollipop. And it was adorable, and people really came over to the tent and really liked what they had sort of at the table as far as giveaways, and people liked talking about recycling. So next year, if you didn't volunteer this summer, do it with me. It was really cool. I also got a really cool t-shirt. Okay. Are there any questions about the staff report? Anything else outstanding? Okay, thank you very much. Next up is talking about continuing the discussion that we had last week about SAC priorities for us to learn more information about at our future SAC meetings. And a PowerPoint was shared.
I just sent it to you so you knew.
Okay. All right, so everyone's seeing this for the first time? Cool, all right.
You can drive if you want.
Thank you.
You said last week,
want me
but
to-
you meant last month.
Sorry, yes, I did mean that we talked about this last month, but the survey was basically sent last week. So folks got to work on that. Thank you.
There we go.
All right, cool. So the way that the survey went out, I know Scott's looking at that. I want to just pull up the Google Drive where I have survey results.
Do you want that on the big screen?
Yeah, can you do that? Thank you. I just want to give a little bit of background. So, at the last meeting, last month, commission members brought up different ideas that they had as their priorities for us to study in areas that we believe could have an impact on sustainability. And so after that meeting, or during that meeting, I wanted to have like a little voting session where we would all discuss. Turns out there's not
Click
enough
on responses.
time.
Responses.
Where do you see it?
And
Oh.
then-
Up top, where's the 6? Okay, great. So we were gonna kind of do this voting thing and like have people really talk about it, and we were gonna have the 5 top choices at the last meeting. We ran out of time, so a survey was sent to commission members that compiled all of these different ideas and all of the different strategies that were pulled from the comprehensive plan for us to learn more or discuss. The survey was created so that individuals could sort of vote on each strategy, or rather rank each strategy as what they felt was maybe not as important or not important to the SAC for us to be concerned about, at least at this time, ranked to 5 points for you think that this is the most important issue. And individuals were also asked to not rank more than 5 strategies as most important. So that way we would end up with some differentiation in the strategies. So no one could just rate everything as most important. So after, can you scroll down just a little bit? I think that that's actually totally fine. So just as an example, so what then I did is I actually, do you have the spreadsheet?
If you can click
see
that.
if it-
Oh.
That. Mhm.
There it is.
Well, okay. Ah, cool. Okay, so that's connected to it.
Mhm.
So we have a spreadsheet then where each of the goals ended up across column 1, along with each person's score for the different goals. And if you went across the columns, each, the number of points essentially assigned to each of the categories was added. And so we end up with 5 that scored the highest, 5 topics that scored the highest. So we're going to discuss those now. But this is sort of where that came from. We had 6 out of 7 responses. So I think that at least one person from the SAC sort of abstained from filling out the survey. And I can go back now to your PowerPoint. Scott, did you rank these in the like highest number
Highest
of
to lowest
points?
points.
To lowest points?
Mhm.
Great, okay. So the first strategy that won for highest points is on zoning and development. Consider a program of zoning and development incentives for new development that incorporates a high level of energy efficiency in building designs like green buildings. Promote LEED design and other green building practices. and talk about the city's goals that, the city goals that these are, the comprehensive plan goals that this strategy is related to. So since this was the one that received the most points, it's something that I think that we'll further study as part of the SAC.
Did you say you wanted to pick out just 3 for us to focus on at this point, or is each one a conversation?
Well, let's go through and see. So we have zoning and development, one from environment, the inventory map of environmentally sensitive areas. People thought that was pretty important. Hazard mitigation plans, reducing effects of natural disasters as a broad theme was important. Development, studying sensible growth. Some additional transportation, also related to development. And one person wrote in an other to review the Build Urbana program annually to determine if it should be continued. I may want to review the strategy and discuss how Build Urbana may or may not relate to the sustainability missions held by the city of Urbana and explore the possibility of a similar program of sustainable residential development. So I think this one is interesting and we should get to it. So, yeah, so so we could sort of have a meeting dedicated to each of these goals, all 5, or pick the top 3. What are some of your thoughts about this from the SAC? What do you think?
I think each of them deserves a discussion.
Okay.
And there's definitely so much information behind all of these that each one could take a full meeting.
I was thinking that each topic could be a topic for a future meeting, just in itself, not try and cram in 2 or 3 or anything.
I guess there's a piece of me that I just want to sort of get on the same page about where we're going with it.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we going? Because I don't know, we're getting towards the end of the climate action plan. So is this in the realm of getting our thoughts together about what needs to be in? Is there supposed to be another climate action plan? Is that an expectation?
There's no funding for a new plan.
Okay, so instead of doing a new plan, we're going to identify some priority areas that we recommend the city work on and we help. Okay. That answered my question. And then, maybe one of them is where could funding come from someday to do the next plan?
Mm-hmm.
But,
Okay.
Because I was just thinking 5 months would be February, and what are we? If we spend 6 months learning and digging into these, is there, how do you get action along the way?
I think some of these are actions that would be incorporated in things outside of the SAC. So a lot of the development ones, for example, would be things that could be built into the zoning ordinance or the subdivision ordinance that would sit there anticipating new growth and then would produce some benefit if that were to happen. So I don't know, that's kind of separate than waiting to be included in a climate action plan or something like that. Some of these, what was the second one?
Oh, sure. First.
There's three were development, and then one was mapping, and
Mm-hmm.
So the question would be, who do you think would be doing the mapping? I assume it's not us, but it's.
Oh, I don't know. That's a great
Is it
question.
a project for a student?
certainly could be.
project for staff, or I don't know.
So I think that like the one thing to point out is that these are all already existing
Okay.
as strategies within Urbana's comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
And one thing that sort of stood out, that I think stood out and was said during the last meeting, was that while the comprehensive plan exists, I'm unfamiliar with staff reports that are addressing each item in the comprehensive plan. So if the comprehensive plan says something like construct an inventory map of the environmentally sensitive areas, part of understanding and studying that is understanding what's been done to that end, who sort of owns that project, what office or department within the city has ownership of that, if it exists. If it hasn't been done, what have been some of the challenges or barriers to that being done? If it was deprioritized, why was it deprioritized? And then also, is this an area that the SAC can provide some level of guidance in some way, or some measure of support, obviously not financial? Do we have internal expertise or anybody that would want to work on something like that? So I think that's where that's coming from and where we sort of go with understanding these. Part of it is also going to be a bit of an exercise for us in understanding what departments in the city are responsible for certain functions that we're interested in. And it can also be a bit of kind of relationship building and also getting to know different department members that we may want to engage or interact with on some of these items.
Before we plan out the next 5 months based on these, it might be
Sure.
worthwhile having planning staff come and give us an update, because they might have done an inventory of environmentally sensitive areas. So it wouldn't make sense for us to set aside a month about how to do
Absolutely.
that. But it would be
Right.
certainly good to know, where that lives and where those areas are. And maybe that becomes something else that we can incorporate, not just identifying them, but how do we preserve them as environmentally sensitive areas, that kind of thing.
So I think you're saying, see if we can get a initial overview, somewhat like the staff report, just here's the status of these
Right.
5 or 6 items. What's going on with these as a single overview in our next session. And then from there, we can discuss sort of the order of what we're digging into.
Yeah. 'Cause there might be only 3 things then that are sort of left, right? They might come back and say, well, we've done a hazard mitigation plan, and it looks like this, and we've done this mapping of environmental sensitive areas. So then there's only 3 things left, or there's only 4 things left, something like that. So we have a sense of what we should be focusing on, because the plan was done in 2005, 2007.
5, I think.
So it's more than 10 years
It's
old.
14, it's
And
13.
Yeah.
It's Aurora's age.
So I think before we go down the path of saying we're going to do something for the next 5 months based on something that was in a document that was 14 years old, we should
Sure.
figure out what sort of update on the status, and then from there we can say, okay, yeah, these are still need to be looked at, and then like a session on each, I think, makes sense, and getting whoever is responsible to come and present to us
And
talk to us about what has been done or what could be done, or the barriers, the challenges, how we could help overcome those barriers and challenges.
Yep.
I can update you on hazard mitigation plan. The city participates in a countywide effort to create a hazard mitigation plan that's updated every 5 years. And that's in process right now to be updated. So you can find the 4-year-old or 5-year-old plan on, I think it's on the Regional Planning Commission's website.
Yep.
Are there, does this list, I am curious, does the list that scored the highest, is there anything that's surprising or stands out or surprising to you that like something didn't make a list, something that you were like, man, I thought that was really important and I'm surprised it's not there? Anything like that comes up for you?
The one about transit, I know I was speaking about the transportation side, so the group within the city that deals with all these bike and pedestrian issues don't really deal with transit-oriented design. So this was up on my list too, and it's there. I don't know about like the Springfield Avenue corridor, that was really based on conversations that were happening at the time, but.
And that,
Sure.
that would have corresponded to a vision of where people thought development was going to intensify in 2005, and that may look different now based on development trends. So it may be more, it may make more sense to talk about it more generally as opposed to just along that particular corridor.
Mhm.
Maybe transit-oriented design in combo with redevelopment of Lincoln Square or a multimodal sort of station around the parking deck in downtown. I mean, there's other ways to get at the intention of this that may, just because it's so old as a comprehensive plan, that would have been, it would have been the result of a 2 to 3 year process of pulling the public. So then we're talking about something that maybe started back in 2002 or something like that. So it would be hard to.
But there is something still about transit-oriented design that still feels like a relevant part of a conversation today.
Sure.
Is that correct? Yeah, okay.
I think so.
I don't actually, this is an area that I'm the weakest in. I know this much about transportation, so I'm really relying on others on this side to be helpful.
So the new development on Green Street does it bring in transit?
Which development?
MCOR?
Yeah.
Core project?
MCOR's all about transit.
So Green Street would be an example of.
That's
Well-
more of a complete street.
Yeah.
This, I don't know, because this is design, and I always think of development where it's about the building.
I don't know
This
what
is-
their intention was there. I mean, typically the phrase that people use is transit-oriented development, and they're talking about the street and the property development together being transit-oriented. So I don't know if that's what was meant here, or if they meant we're just going to make the street transit-oriented.
So I may have also typed it wrong. I wanted to start like, I
I think I remember seeing this.
Yeah.
Probably copy and paste it.
Typically, it's just
Okay.
it's the concept that you want to add density and a mix of uses around areas that are well served by transit. So
Okay.
we have lots of these sort of arterial streets that are well served by transit, being MTD, that it could make sense that any sort of development or redevelopment on them should be dense or have a mix of uses that would encourage walkability in the immediate area, but then also the use of transit to get from these residential areas to other sort of activity centers in the region.
It might help to describe the opposite of transit-oriented development.
Auto-centric development.
Or a transit stop that has nothing but an ocean of parking lot.
Sure. Yeah, or just a transit stop that's serving, a fairly low-density residential neighborhood. So transit-oriented design focuses more dense development around that transit stop. So we don't have anything like that explicitly other than downtown.
Downtown,
Although
Urbana.
downtown is not very mixed in its development, it's mostly commercial. And if it were to be transit oriented, it would have to do with bringing in more residential uses that were much more intensely developed. So apartment buildings within walking distance, within half mile of, the, I don't know if we would call it a multimodal station, but the confluence of buses that stop at the parking deck.
It could simply be that also in 2005, design was used interchangeably with development, and within urbanist circles, development obviously took more of the priority in terminology. No, but I was thinking that this strategy meant lend itself to. It didn't make the list, and I don't think we discussed it too much, but the one related to Lincoln Square.
Can you do a control find on Lincoln Square? Can you do like a control find on Lincoln?
It was work with owners of Lincoln Square Village and historic Lincoln Hotel to transform the mall into a mixed-use activity center consistent with the downtown plan. Work with owners to market that vision, and obviously that's been something that the city's looked into quite a bit. But to my knowledge, I wasn't sure if there was any sort of incorporation with transit-oriented development within those conversations or within the envisioning process of Lincoln Square. So that could be something to maybe merge together. So.
'Cause I think a lot of cities now with transit stops, primarily on subway or streetcar or such things, they include like the transit stop is actually the center, and they build on top of the transit
Mhm.
stop.
Mhm.
So they have commercial, residential in that same building.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So it'd be like taking the train station in Champaign and turning it into
A neighborhood.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As opposed to like rail stops in the suburbs of Chicago that are surrounded by parking, that are more park and ride stations.
Right.
Mhm.
That would be another sort of opposite of transit-oriented design.
Just think of you're walking off the transit. What would be pleasant enough to keep you walking? Not a parking lot.
But something like this would be good to get not just the city, but MTD to come and talk to us, because I know MTD has had conversations with the city around doing projects that incorporated pieces of the hotel to make sort of transit-oriented design around a more formal station in that area of downtown. And this is kind of what they're doing in downtown Champaign. If that the hockey rink project goes forward, that's essentially a transit-oriented design around a line station. So it's something that they're thinking about. It would be worthwhile to have them come and talk to us about what they're thinking.
So the idea is that like the transit stop should feature like a destination, whether it's work, play, or like living. Ideally a mix of all three.
Mhm.
The mixture.
Phoenix.
Okay. Do any of these topics feel more urgent for us to study sooner? I want to actually maybe pass that to you, Scott, as well. If Marcus was here, it would be a good question for Marcus
Yeah.
too. And I would like to share this with these results with Marcus and get his sort of take and opinions as well.
He'd probably be the one who would help us get the status. You know, if we said, can you provide a status of this,
Yeah.
then that also would help us understand,
Wait,
be
yeah,
able
I
to
think
build our own
understand-
opinion
exactly.
of the urgency.
So a lot of the keywords here are aspirational in the existing planning, zoning, permitting regime. And that will continue to be, you know, in the city's plans because it's part of broadly shared values. As was mentioned, the comp plan is fairly dated, and there is an aspiration to update that or something along those lines. But that will require some funding and that will require some funding. So when that might happen, I can't speculate. But one of the challenges here is incentives for new development. You know, we're working on improving the city's financial position, and that kind of precludes giving away money. You know, incentives are typically giving away money. You know,
Is that
reducing
like
fees
the
or
Don't
financial
pay
incentives.
taxes for
Tax abatements.
a few years
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
you build and do here.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
so that's
Okay.
that's difficult, not impossible, but that's one of the challenges. But that's that's an ongoing conversation that can be had. This one, I'm just at a loss as to contemplate what the outcome would be. There's, you know, if we think about the city and the ETJ, I don't know that there's a lot of wetlands to protect because it's farmed.
Remember what an ETJ is?
Sorry, extraterritorial jurisdiction. So I don't remember what that distance is, but
1.5
the city has, sorry?
It's 1.5 miles.
And the city has a little bit of political
Planning
influence.
authority.
Planning authority over that because it's future development and annexation area for the city. So the city and county both have some overlapping jurisdiction there. So it's hard to imagine what the environment, you know, there's no endangered species there because it's farmed. There's no stream bank to stabilize because it's channelized ditches. So I don't know what we would find were we to map things.
So there was a, I think the Parkland Solar Array came across a wetland when I was told, I didn't read it somewhere, that there was a wetland in the area that had been farmed when they went to put in the solar array, and so they had to, you know, account for that and adjust accordingly. But it was a farmed area that was actually designated as a wetland. I also know that there are state endangered species in our farmed area. We came across it when we tried to do a wind farm, which would have been in the ETJ, except that the university is not it's not unincorporated. It's not like the county area. So ETJ is just in the county area. And then, so that was a state endangered species. And then there's a prairie there. And on the north side, there's the woods. I don't know if it's officially environmentally sensitive, but there are some areas. But I guess there's...
Could be aspirationally environmentally sensitive too. So it could be areas that, I mean, part of this sort of type of exercise is to identify areas that you should work towards conserving. And now we think about working towards conserving areas because they provide benefits in terms of like ecosystem services, or they contain natural systems that are important. So particularly around stormwater management. So there might be areas that may not currently be, but were at one time, or could be restored to have provide some functional benefit. That would be worth
There's been...
identifying.
Yeah, that makes me think there's been a lot of conversations over the decades about creating a wetland. And I have no idea what that would take, or what it would mean, or what it would look like?
City and the Park District did one.
Yeah, there's that one park has it.
Yeah,
Right.
north of Washington,
Brook-
north of yeah.
Yeah, Prairie Park, like
Yeah.
around there.
You know, maybe getting some information about what that entailed and whether if the park district thinks we need more and how.
You should
Is
get a
this-
Park District speaker sometime.
Yeah, does this commission relate to the city, the Urbana Park District? Like, it does because they're in town, right? But they're.
There would be another government jurisdiction that we could talk to and relate with.
Mhm.
This may be a good student project, someone that can explore and find some of the things that you've described.
Mhm.
This one, I think this is just a checked box. This is done county-wide so that everyone in the county, can check that requirements box if they want to apply for a FEMA grant. You'll have to relate to your hazard mitigation plan. So this is just done as a matter of course every 5 years.
One, I would be interested in learning more about what is involved in the hazard mitigation plan. So sort of just beyond the checked box. It's not something we have to go over tonight, but sort of beyond the checkbox. Hazard mitigation plans could also be things like have the entire city of Urbana be off fossil fuels by the year 2035,
Mhm.
for example.
Mhm.
That is a wider hazard mitigation. So I think that is hazard mitigation, are we addressing issues of climate change, or is hazard mitigation in terms of response to environmental disasters and natural disasters? So is it short term or long term? So I think there are a lot of questions that we could explore to learn more from that, and maybe having someone from Cures even, I don't know what that looks like, but would just be interested in, I think from a learning perspective on this one, maybe not so much as a sustainability perspective unless we were being asked specific questions.
So I looked through the hazard mitigation plan a while ago, and it's got changes in storms, how the tornadoes are it has a lot about climate change.
Mhm.
So it definitely ties well to the Sustainability Advisory Commission. But also, I didn't look at it in detail as far as what sort of programs did we say we wanted to have in place. This might be things that this commission could really, advocate for.
Sure. Mhm.
But maybe it needs to wait until the new plan's written.
No, if you want something in it, now's the time. The new plan, it's going to be several month process. Susan Monty at the county and RPC oversees that, so she could be a potential speaker. I think, Stacy, to your question, I think the Champaign County Hazard Mitigation Plan is more conventional. It talks about, and we're going to be including information in this next version about the updated design storm standards from the state climatologist's office. But it's conventional in the sense of how we mitigate the harm of, say, a flood. Not in the sense of how do we contribute to reducing climate change so that floods aren't as bad. I think it's more focused on mitigation activities that we have more or less full control over locally, whereas if Champaign County went carbon neutral but nobody else did, we would still have the same increase in hazards from global warming. So in that sense, it's conventional, I would describe it.
Okay.
But we can talk about that and
Thank
maybe
you.
have Susan.
Mhm.
Also, I voted high on this because I think it ties to the resilience, and I know since we're we're going to be drafting a U of I chapter about community resilience to climate change, I know this plays into that. So it got a high vote for me because of that.
Does the plan only, is it solely looking at what the city can do to mitigate and respond to natural disasters, or is it across sectors? Does it incorporate, like, say, the nonprofit sector or even private
I think it's primarily focused on things the city owns and controls.
Okay.
The governments, because it's the Champaign County, so you get all the, I think it's probably the urbanized area, major governments, and then
Mhm.
There's one, if I can find it, there is a page that basically it's a table, city by city or jurisdiction by jurisdiction table. And so if I can find it, we'll zoom to, in 2009, what the city was saying that they were going to do for mitigation.
it's probably alphabetical, so it organizes at the end.
Yeah, but is it C, for city or U for Urbana?
Oh, I see.
Find out.
Yeah, it's you for the.
This is riveting television. Here we go.
Yay.
Emergency backup. What does that contribute to? Integrated information base for use.
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know what that
Assessment.
means. I'm interested.
Share information.
No, I understand that, but like,
Well, the identify existing buildings as shelters is something that we were talking about. I was chatting with some friends this weekend about shelters, and as the weather gets weirder, and the shelters are closing instead of opening new shelters. What can we do for the people?
educating the public, so sort of some level of advocacy.
Number 8 you were working on recently, or
Who was working
asking
on
about
it?
it.
You were?
No, Scott was
Oh.
asking
Yes, the city is looking at updating the building code. International Energy Conservation Code. I don't know, maybe also the building code. The International Energy Conservation Code is the electrical code.
So one of the things that I think is sort of concern is that all these funding sources for this are just like local funding sources, but we know that we don't have a lot of funding locally.
Yeah, and a lot of these are going to get marked as, did not happen or discontinued or something like that.
Because of, okay.
Zoning transfer of development rights, do we do that as a community?
I've never heard of us doing that.
Number 15 is at the bottom there.
Well, it does say it was just within the Boneyard Creek District, it's more specifically. Yeah, I think a lot of the language, I don't know what all of the language means. Having an expert to come and talk to us about some of the stuff, just let us ask these
But wait, there's more.
questions.
There's more.
We don't need to remove the trees from the hazards anymore since they were just,
Are
they
they
all
just
got
doing
knocked
it
down.
themselves?
One of my favorite phraseologies is, when appropriate, do this thing. Oh, because I was going to do it when it was inappropriate, but since you curbed me, I'll only do it when it's appropriate. Good thing they included that.
It's probably just their excuse to be like, it's just an inappropriate time. I mean,
Right.
That's why we couldn't
Right.
do it.
Right.
I mean, that's
Because the plan said when appropriate.
when appropriate. I mean, you can't mess with that. Can't mess with
Maybe
that.
it's also when properties become available. Yeah. Is there more pages? Also, I realized, so, like, I would like to,
Oh, here's completed. These were
Not-
completed as of 2009.
okay, cool.
Goes on.
Yeah, I don't want to continue to use a lot of our time just to scroll through.
No, it's my fault. I brought it up.
Yeah, so maybe let's move into some next steps.
So you get through the.
Do you want to finish going through the
Oh,
list?
sorry.
Yeah.
If
I'll
you
make it
felt like
quick.
it.
Sorry.
Okay.
So I was
So
gonna
I
ask
thought we
you,
would actually do this at another meeting when it was more like developed, like the response was more further developed.
That's nice. Study sensible growth is a bit vague.
so Scott, I was wondering what Cures is doing, or what, if they've decided what they want to do in their banner, if they,
Not, I would say it's not zeroed in yet.
okay. So sensible growth, something
Say again?
that would interest them?
Yeah, but vague.
Yeah.
You know, how is it research,
Mhm.
research to action at a high level worthy of,
Mhm.
the University of Illinois system?
Mhm.
That's the challenge. I think this is very relevant,
Okay.
especially with the talk and discussion and plans about, other MTD-related developments in Urbana.
And the tie to Lincoln Square. That's a
And
really
talk
good
of
point.
Lincoln Square development, yeah. Mhm.
And then what's next?
This one, I would just recommend bringing Brandon Boyes in to talk about it, or one of his staff.
I don't, I'm not familiar with Build Urbana and I didn't look it up. Did anyone here
It's a tax
propose that?
incentive for new home construction. I received it when I bought my house in 2005.
Okay.
There was a brand new building in Urbana.
It was retooled based on new state statutes, new type of enterprise zone rules that the state approved a few years ago.
Is it solely Stone Creek right now?
That's what I was wondering. Is that like Build in Stone Creek? Get a tax in
You
something?
gotta, I think the answer is no. I think it's broader than that, but we'd have to ask economic development to come in and discuss it.
I mean, mine wasn't in Stone Creek.
Okay.
It was next to it though.
But generally, it's meant to incentivize new subdivisions on the fringe, right?
If you can probably find an enterprise zone map.
I had tried asking the assessor and got a very processed response. I think as a means of not sort of conveying any bias towards or against it. But yeah, just mainly the sprawling areas of.
Yeah. I mean, that's my sense of it too, which would be a good thing for us to look at, especially if we're talking about a lack of resources or interest in providing incentives for infill projects that would more closely align with sustainability goals.
Well, and the long-range transportation plan says we want to fund enhancement of our existing infrastructure as opposed to new roads on the edge. And so if this is like pushing for the new areas on the edge,
Well, not entirely.
Are they the green areas?
Yeah. This is Champagne side.
Okay.
so it's all that edging. It's not only the edging, but it's a lot on the edge.
That's a lot of land. Wait, is it light green or dark green or middle green?
Yeah.
Which
Just stuff here.
Does the different color shades mean something?
Okay, can you
I don't know the answer.
unclick enterprise zones? I
Just
just want to
green
see what
over gray.
happens and then I'm going to re-overlay it.
Oh,
those
it's
are
whether
parks.
it's the city or not.
Okay, so these are enterprise zones. Okay.
So it's all along 130. from the interstate south.
You know, a good question would be, are those our rules or are those state rules, or, you know?
Mhm.
Some winds are too low. It's kind of on like three sides, really.
Not the university side.
That's true.
Well, is eligibility based on income?
It's on the
Census tract income?
Who's in charge that we're gonna invite to
Economic
come
Development
talk to us about
Division.
this? Okay, cool.
Brandon Boys.
Thank you.
Can you scroll up just a little, Stacy?
Sure.
Just how far up does that north side? No, just pull it with your mouse. Yeah, that works.
Sorry. You meant like that.
Yeah, but it's okay. It's good.
That's good, these parcels?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, all that work that went into Olympian Drive, where is that?
That's that.
But is it
Olympia
the,
Drive is like
Yeah, it's pretty high up there.
pretty up here, isn't it?
it's north of the,
Does this give you street names?
Yeah, if you zoom
It's
in, it's the rendering, yeah.
Okay.
Here it is.
There's Olympian Drive,
it's
is
kind of that
here.
north end. That's Champagne.
Do we have an Olympia Drive
Yeah.
that goes through?
So see this line, it kind of veers up. You see where it veers up slightly?
Okay.
And then it goes to Lincoln.
Yeah.
Is that where it stops now?
No, it keeps going east out to Cunningham Avenue.
Is that still the city up there? Or is it?
That's such a good question.
I don't actually don't think it is.
I think it might be.
Oh, it's.
All right, so I think
Urbana
that we're
zoning
gonna,
will
we're
do
gonna
it.
like invite people here to talk to us about this kind of
Yeah.
stuff in the
Yeah.
future. I think it's actually really all very interesting.
It's the ETJ.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
So it's in that one.
So
and a
the
half
dark
mile.
border on the
Mhm.
on the bottom there, that's the city.
Oh.
And the city can only expand like
Right.
adjacent to itself.
No big problem.
So like you can't, even if you want to be in the city, if you're not already connected to somebody.
Okay.
Huh. Okay.
All right, so are there any concrete proposals for moving forward?
I'd like the summary from planning about each of those
Okay,
status.
we got it out.
Okay. All right, so for next meeting, to continue this discussion, we'll request planning department for a summary, less than a page, like half page or less, on each item, including any updates about the item. What are the other key questions that we want to know?
Are they planning, like are they on the verge of doing something like with the hazard mitigation plan?
Okay.
Who would be a good subject matter expert? Or who's the contact?
Susan Monte.
Well, I mean, for each
Well,
of the
for each
five.
item,
Oh.
for all five.
And I would put the build Urbana into, I'd lump it into the sensible development.
Development,
Yeah.
okay.
And then, yeah, I mean, I was imagining that Marcus and Scott would kind of gather together the information, and then one of them would do a PowerPoint with here's the situation with all of these, and we could ask some basic questions. Oh, and is there any related timeline associated with these for some reason? Like, oh, we're looking to build Urbana, but guess what? It expires next year or something like that. Not that that's
So sort of like a
kind
relevance, like is it timely and relevant to the SAC and to the overall like community goals?
And then that way we
Okay.
can pick out what we want to dig into in more detail the next month.
Sounds good.
I like it.
I like it. I think we reached consensus on this, which is really great. I'm not asking for actual proposals, but I think we have a continuing discussion going forward. So thank you all for sort of bearing through this process. Yeah, cool. Any other questions or items that want to come up under that topic? We're okay to move on. Okay, we're gonna move on. I'm gonna move into announcements. On October the 17th from noon to 1 in the Urbana City Building is the Midwest Rose Green and Champaign County Sustainability Network Lunch and Learn about composting and top dressing with compost. Thank you. Also on 10/17, cool, is going to be a Midwest Rose Green at Green Drinks. It's going to take place at the Broadway Food Hall, so join us there from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. on October 17th. Another Midwest Rose Green event will take place at Urbana Market on the Square from 7 a.m. to noon. I think that's during the farmers market on October the 19th. So that should be a Saturday.
I have an announcement.
I will let you read yours after I'm done with mine. Sure. I have one more. The week of September 13th through the 22nd is something called Welcoming Week. Welcoming Week celebrates the growing movement of inclusive communities that fully embrace new Americans and their contributions to the social fabric of our country. This has been created by the YMCA of the USA's national partner, Welcoming America. Welcoming Week brings together immigrants and US-born residents to promote cross-cultural understanding and raise awareness of the benefits of welcoming everyone. Please join us in Welcoming Week events, again, September 13th through the 22nd. We will support communities in moving beyond divisiveness and fragmentation, bring together newcomers and longstanding residents, and also stand in solidarity with impacted communities. Part of Welcoming Week, you can have coffee with the Urbana Mayor in Council Chambers on Wednesday, September 18th at 10 a.m. We would love to see you there. Okay, go for it. What's yours?
The university submitted our Bicycle Friendly University renewal application, and the SAC received a survey, but we are asking anyone out in the public or anyone who visits this county or this campus to fill out the survey if you have ridden a bicycle and are familiar with bicycle infrastructure at the university. You can get it from bike.illinois.edu.
And all of you should have received an email today with the link to that you should feel free to share with other students, other community members, your family, and friends as well. Are there any other announcements? Our next, I think you probably said our next meeting, but
October 1.
October 1st in Council Chambers? Okay, October 1 in Council Chambers. We will see you all there. With no further business before the SAC this evening, I call this meeting adjourned.